Nick the Informative Fisherman here, guys. I received a lot of questions when I was posting about my punch rig. When I boat flipped that 10-8, a lot of people were asking because I put the punch modification that I do on my punching setup. Now, if you see my punch weight right there, no bobber stop, no bobber stop. What's going on? And you see me slide it, okay? Essentially, there was a technique a long time ago called mojo shotting. Some guys still do it, kind of aging myself here. But if you don't know what mojo shotting is, it's like taking rubber strands and inserting it between your line and the weight to partially fix your weight, your punch weight here, or Carolina rig in the past for mojo shotting. It was typically like a finesse Carolina rig. And all that's doing is putting rubber in between your weight and your line, creating tension, okay? And why I do this for punching, I will show you. So now you'll see right here my punch setup, okay? You can see I have a punch stop here, but same thing. Look at my weight, not going anywhere, okay? Still hanging right there. What in the world is that? Well, simple. I'm doing that mojo shot method with a punch weight. I know other people do different techniques. There's 3 different techniques to accomplish this that I'll explain it with. What happens is you can do a double bobber stop trick, you can do a toothpick, or you can mojo shot by pulling it through, and I'll show you how to do all these. What you do want to have is a little carp fishing bait needle for putting them boilies to go back through your weight to get whatever it is you're sticking out of there. So you'll see, now I'm a stippler for high performance. So I have that mojo shotted weight and I have a punch stop. And the reason for that is I do not like my weight sliding away. I feel like if my weight gets down here, my punch skirt's gonna slide halfway. It's gonna get away from my bait. I want a very clean unit. Now you're gonna hear people argue that they don't snell knot because they're tired of it. When the weight pushes against a plant, it puts your hook in a bind, okay? Now you'll see right there, sitting nice and straight. If I pull down, you see the hook cavitate up towards my hand. Just like so. Pull down, hook cavitates up. Now by mojo shotting your weight, the only time that cavitation is happening is when you're setting the hook, okay? It's not happening when you're pulling against plants. So I set it just like that, and you can see I have a very clean setup right there. And when I'm coming over primrose and stuff, it doesn't cavitate that hook to bind it. Once you're over an 1.5 ounce size tungsten weight for punching, you have to use a snell knot. Do not do the Palomar. That's for you can use a Palomar on a 1 ounce, but if you snell, you're going to catch just way more fish. Your hook up to land ratio is going to go through the roof. You could still catch them on a Palomar. 3/4 and less, Palomar's perfectly fine. And what's going on is you have such a big weight that it's popping the fish's mouth open and that hook's just escaping, or you're not getting deep hook penetration in that fish's mouth. So a snail is an absolute must once you start going into the bigger punching applications. People that talk about having success with doing a Palomar knot with the braid and an 1.5 to 2 ounce punch weight, they're not doing it that much. I really think they're not using the bigger weights, and they're just doing heavy flipping, not necessarily punching. You get around primrose and stuff like that, or people are not using flipping hooks, they're using EWGs or worm hooks. Those are gonna bend out under heavy situations, actual punching situations. So let me show you how I rig those up. All right, guys, so I just slid my punch weight off, and I still have a bunch of rubber in there. This is the little carp screw that I'm talking about right here. So all I did, and the convenient part is when you have packed in rubber, the little carp screw deal here for rigging on boilies, it's like a little drill bit. So you turn it by hand to where you can get a good grip on whatever's in there and pull it back out. So same principle. All I'm going to do right here is I'm going to take 3 rubber bands, okay? Hopefully you guys can see that all right. I'm going to put 3 of them on there just to give you a good idea. And don't mind me, I got the shaky hands. And I'm going to put 3 rubber bands on. And all I'm going to do is tie 2 square knots in my braid. 1 square knot. All that is square knot, just fancy name for an overhand knot. Nothing special. And I'm going to have this ready, just like that, okay? So I'm going to have those ready to go. I'm going to put my weight on now. This is where you would put your punch stop up the line first, okay? I could show you some modifications to get around that too, but do you actually need a punch stop? You don't. But if you're punching for multiple days straight on the same setup, I use 80-pound braid to where it never fails. The fish do not care when you're punching. Any vertical presentation dropping in on them is going to be just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my braid through my punch weight, okay? And this is where you want to come in through the top with it. So I'm going to take the braid that I have on for my rubber bands, and I'm going to pull it through, okay? I'm going to try to turn my hand over so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm pulling the rubber in through the weight now, okay? So I have the rubber sticking through on both sides. Now this is where you hold your main line and you hold it tight against the side of the bait, and I'm going to show you how to prevent cutting your line. Take the scissors, of course, trim that off. Same thing, hold your main line so you don't end up cutting the wrong one. Fold it over here, and then you fold it over on the back. So now we have the line pulling the rubber halfway through. We're just going to cut all that off on the back, nice and clean, yada, yada. So now we have that pegged weight. Now, what to make sure you didn't fray your line, I always come up a few extra inches and I cut this lower portion off. Like I said, I will punch for literally months on this exact same rig and not worry about it. Yeah, I could clean that up a little bit better, but what you have now is a punch weight that's under tension, okay? So that's going to work fantastic for you doing it like that. Now let me show you a couple other ways to do it. All right, let's show you the toothpick trick. Now, one thing you need to know is not all hole sizes on punch weights are the same. For example, the one I was just showing you that I was doing the Mojo Shot modification with is a much bigger ID than this. So this is why I'm showing you the toothpick technique second here. So let's say I have that on. Normally the toothpick's enough to cause it to bind. You can see it sits kind of freely in there. There's not a lot of tension and the toothpick will pop out, but you can still see it is hanging on there. Now, I've got punch weights with 3 different hole IDs. The rubber works just fine on every single one, no matter the size. So for example, here, I push in the toothpick, you'll see it's locked on. So in this case, I would push the toothpick in, I would break a piece off. Now you can see it's caught in the tip. Now you could try it like this, little tension, there you go, little tension, and that works just fine. Sometimes that toothpick will come out over a lot of wear and tear. I would say to put it in the back too, you can do that, but the problem is the toothpick sometimes just puts it under entirely too much tension. And then you do have little splinters in there that can fray your line, but it's not a big deal. Just in the tip of your weight like that will work just fine. So if you're in a pinch or your bobber stop is not holding your weight and your weight's sliding around a lot, always carry some toothpicks in your tackle box. I've done that with heavy flipping, with punching, a lot of different stuff that the toothpicks have actually saved the day. You can see it works remarkably well. Doesn't hold up nearly as good as running the rubber through there though. Last but not least, the double bobber stop or bobber stop plunging, what I like to call it. I'm going to put one up the main line. Okay, I'm going to slide that up here. Because I'm actually going to rig this one and leave it attached for one of my other setups. So I'll go through the whole setup with you. So now I'm going to run the braid back through the punch weight and out. Now, okay, I could still do that modification and Mojo Shot this, okay? But let's say I don't have the materials and all I have is bobber stops. These are punch stops, regular bobber stops, the little round ones. You can use this for as well. The holes with the bigger ID, sometimes 3 of the little tiny bobber stops does it. Sometimes 2. You can feel how tight it is when it's going in. So then I'm going to take an extra bobber stop, okay? Let me see this and get one rigged on there for you. My lighting's a little weird right now. Get on there. All right. Get on there. Okay. So now I'm gonna let you guys see it from this perspective first. So you can see I have a bobber stop on both sides here. Hopefully you can. I don't know how squared up the camera is, but you can see this here. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna slide the weight against that little punch stop and keep giving it some tension. Now, what happens is you can actually push that weight into there, and it will go with wear and tear. In time, it'll work its way into there. There you go. Now, as it starts to pull, that weight and that bobber stop's now making itself inside there. So it's like a little protection spot. So now, essentially, I have double tension, okay? Because even sliding forward, look, it's just hanging on from the back side. It's not apt to slide forward, but if I want to make sure if I'm punching through heavy cover, that weight doesn't move at all. I have the bobber stop in front of it, the bobber stop behind it. Just like that rig I showed you earlier, now I can go ahead and rig up my whole punch setup. All right, so now we're actually getting our full punch setup done up. Bobber stop in the back, into the back of that punch weight. California Reservoir Lures punch stop right here. John Cherapati makes those, one of the West Coast legendary jig fishermen. Makes some fantastic jigs as well. So now I'm going to just rig on my BKK flipping hooks. And now this is the high carbon steel one. I boat flipped that 10/8 and everybody was freaking out. This high carbon steel is thinner wire diameter and insanely strong. This stuff is super strong. So I'm just going to tie a Snell on here now. And there you have it, guys. That's my punching setup. Now, the Mojo shot works fantastic. The double punch stop works fantastic. The multiple bobber stop sliding in, fantastic. Some people ask if I use a bead. I will if I don't have a punch stop. But this punch stop has essentially what would be a bead that the skirt material is running through. So now you can see as it hangs right there, no cavitation. If I push down on the weight like it's in a fish's mouth, boom, the hook cavitates up to the side. So there is absolutely no issue whatsoever. Other modifications that I do for a really high-end punch setup, before I go out there, that little tag in on my snail knot right there, I will take a lighter and I will blot it. And all that means is heating up the end of that braid and it'll ball up. And I also take a dot of crazy glue Loctite and I put it on the knot. And that's a setup that I can go out and catch 300, 400, 500 punch fish on throughout pretty much whole entire summer and not have any issue with retying unless I notice like an obvious fray in my line. But hopefully those advanced tips really help you guys out.